안녕 친구들. I hope you've been well. As I mentioned for those of you who are wondering where I've been, I recently filmed a Musings week 6 through 8 explaining that. And then last night I was able to film episode 13 and uploaded that. So episode 14, probably 15 and 16 as well, since by now I think the English subtitles are available. The recaps will be much shorter, but fingers crossed that if I keep up with this, watching and filming schedule, I should be able to get back on track in time for Monday's episode 17 broadcast. So here's hoping, right? So today I'm going to do a very short recap, and I think it works out that I film in the mornings. That way I don't have to stop in the middle of my filming and because there are people milling around, and it feels weird filming when there are people around because I just look like a crazy person then, right? Just talking to myself. Anyway, so episode 14 starts off with Sojong talking with Waryong in that library, and we find out finally what was said. Waryong reveals to Sojong that he is definitely reincarnated, and Sojong says, "Are you back then as the 1,000-year curse?" And Waryong pretty much, he's like, what are you going to do? And Waryong says that he's here to destroy everything. And what's interesting is when Sojong mentions Kangchi, because Waryong actually seeks out Sojong to figure out who Kangchi is. Because Waryong notices Kangchi's not completely human. He senses that Kangchi's not completely human, but he's not also completely Kumio, right? And so Sojong says he's Hoa's son, but he's also your son. And for a second, it takes Waryong a second to figure out who Hoa is, and I don't necessarily know if it was because he wanted to block her memory or he was just playing like he had forgotten about her, the woman who had betrayed him. Anyway, so Waryong takes Sojong and throws him across the room, and Sojong crashes to the bookcase and he falls down and pretty much loses consciousness. Well, with that set, we then move back to the Lantern Festival where Kangchi and Yeo Wool have met, and Kangchi just stares at Yeo Wool like, slacking jaw, and he's like, "Come, Yeo Wool?" And Yeo Wool's like, "Hi." And he just keeps staring at her, and he can't really say much. And Yeo Wool's like, "Why, do I look weird?" And he's like, "Uh-huh." And she's like, "Really? What about me looks weird?" And I love the insecurity that she shows there because she's not used to dressing as a woman, and so there's that insecurity that she has. And Kangchi, so sensitive, right? He says everything is weird. So, Yo was like, fine then, I'm just gonna leave. And then he like literally grabs her, and it's so cute how he grabs her. He like literally just grabs her by the, tuft, and he says, he's like, no, that's not what I mean at all. And then he really can't say much. Anyhow, what happens is that, sorry, I was looking at some notes. So while they're doing that, though, we move to the 100-Year Inn, where the Lantern Festival, Chogonung is holding his own little party for who we later find out in this episode is the older Seowa. We don't know how yet she survived Chogonung's, sword slash and things like that. But anyhow, she is completely veiled, so no one recognizes her and things like that. And she is the guest of honor. And Chung Jo, of course, is there. And Chun Soo Ryun, the headmistress, plays the 5-drum set for the first time in 10 years. And everyone who listens is just amazed at her skill and her performance, right? And then when it ends, Chogonung says, "So what did you think of the performance?" And the older Seowa, I'm just going to call her the older Seowa, okay? But basically, she's the Japanese veiled widow. She says in Japanese to her escort, it's pitiful. I'm sure when she was young, she, was quite skilled, but, this is a shameful act. It's such a waste of time to watch. And then she walks out. But before she does, Suryeon, I guess, understands and says, "I'm really sorry that my performance displeased you." And then the older Seoa breaks into Korean and she says to Suryeon, she says, no, the technical skill was fine, but um, your heart wasn't in it. And that's what made the performance lackluster. And what was interesting was when she insults Suryeon's playing like that, Chung Jo steps boldly um, forward and asks the widow, or older Seoa, what about my mistress's performance did you find lacking? Because anyone who heard it was moved. She said, I personally was moved by her performance. And so, of course, they find out. And then Chogonen gets upset because, Chung Jo was rude to his guests and Suryeon hadn't been able to control her, novice kisang and things like that. Well, Chung Jo leaves the 100-year inn to return back to, her home or the brothel. And she ends up coming across, let me make sure, she walks through the Lantern Festival and she flashes back to when Tae Seo, her maidservant, and Kangchi had last visited, and there's a scene where they tease Tae Seo about making the same wish again about the welfare and the prosperity of not only 100-year inn, but the family and all of this stuff, right? Well, she's looking and she's reminiscing because, of course, that's her old life. Well, she ends up seeing Kangchi, and so she turns to avoid him, and she sees Yeo there, of course, too. And as she turns, she bumps into a drunken man, and she says, "Excuse me," and the drunken man then starts giving her a hard time, and so Kangchi steps forward, kind of like literally twists the arm of the drunken man, and he comes to Chung Jo's rescue, right? Well, his actions, this encounter does really two things. One is that Yeo Wool is reminded that Kangchi really does love Chung Jo, and Chung Jo is now reminded of the fact that she rejected Kangchi, and it seems like to her Kangchi is now with Yeo Wool. But anyway, Kangchi leaves Yeo Wool there, and he follows Chung Jo home. And before Chung Jo goes into the brothel, she asks him, does she know? Meaning, Yeo Wool, right? Does she know your state? And Kangchi's like, yeah. And I think that really is a huge blow to Chung Jo because she realized that even though Yeo Wool knows she's choosing to stay by Kangchi, whereas Chung Jo had rejected Kangchi, right? And so there's definitely, I think, the beginnings of regret in Chung Jo that she had rejected Kangchi. But she's really harsh to Kangchi, and part of it is because I know she's trying to put distance between her and Kangchi, and so she says, as a way of thanking you for what you did, back there in the village, come by one time and I will, pour you a drink. And Kangchi says, don't treat me like that, And she's like, what? I'm a kisang now. That's the only way that I know how to live. And he says, no, you're not. And he's trying to basically remind her that she is still Chung Jo, in much the same way that Yeo would have reminded him that he is still Kangchi, despite the outward changes. And Chung Jo basically is very harsh in her retort when she says, what? And pretend to be human when you're not, when you're just a monster? Should I also pretend to be a non-kisang or a respectable citizen when I'm really a kisang, right? And then she walks in. And she leaves Kangchi there. Well, by the time Kangchi returns, it's pretty early in the morning, and Yeo Wool has been waiting for him all this time, and she's now back in her, tomboy or, martial arts outfit. And she just says to Kangchi, Chung Jo is the most important person to you, huh? And then she's like, let's go home. And she's about to walk back, and then Kangchi grabs her and he turns her around, and he wants to say that she's misunderstanding the situation, but the words just don't come out. Of course, right? So the only thing that Kangchi can say is, I'm hungry. And Yo's like, what? And he's like, I'm hungry. Do you want to get some breakfast? Well, that's a really bad move because back at the academy, we flash to Kwon and he's making this grimacing face. It's so cute. For those of you who haven't seen it, definitely head on over to the blog and take a look at that picture. But Kwon is peeved that Yeol has not come home that night and that Kangchi apparently didn't come home that night either, right? And so he's about to like go running after him. He's like that jerk, I'm gonna kill him. And the kitchen master has to restrain him, and then he has to like call for recruits, and so he gets Hong to restrain him as well. And as they're trying to restrain Kwon from, wreaking havoc on Kangchi, who should show up but Dam Pyung Joon, right? And so they kind of lie and say, the kitchen master says, oh, Yeol, I sent her on a mission or an errand with Kangchi very early in the morning because Dam Pyung Joon was like, oh, is Yeol awake? I want to talk with her. So very, very interesting. But anyway, before anything else, before Dam Pyung Joon can actually ask, so what errand or where did she go? They hear news that one of their own has been found dead in the forest. And when they go, it looks like it is disciple Kim, the soldier Kim, the one who had befriended Kangchi, I believe. So just incredibly shocking that one of their own has been found dead. Well, back in the village, as Kangchi is eating, Yeo is like, wow, you must be really hungry. Do you want to eat mine as well? And Kangchi's like, oh, really? How can you not, find this yummy? And then while he's eating, two of the other diners start to throw insults at Kangchi, for being someone who betrayed the merchant park, who literally helped raise him, took him in, and things like that. Well, Yeol gets all hot-headed. She goes to confront them and basically ends up kicking them. It's awesome. And then Kangchi tries to stop her, and when the guy takes a swing at Yeol, Kangchi stops his hand, and they're about to fight. And what's kind of funny is who should come to their rescue but I think his name, Mabongchul, the local thug, right? The one that Kangchi had saved. So he comes in and everyone assumes that our thug is going to take the other diner's side, and everyone's stunned when he takes Kangchi's side, and he says, if you mess with Kangchi, then you have to mess with me. And even his gang is kind of surprised, and he has his underlings called Kangchi 형님, which is the polite or the respectful form for an older brother, or to just say, hey, you're superior than I am, right? And then he does this weird thing where he goes like this and he winks, and it's so creepy. And Kangchi's like, stop it, you're grossing me out. And Mabongchul just keeps like winking at him and saying, hey, anytime you need, I've got your back. And the look that Kangchi and Yeol both give him, they're like, what on earth? It's hilarious. So there were a lot of cute moments in this episode. Well, Kangchi returns to find that, one of their own of the academy has been murdered. And when he goes to pay his respects, the other soldiers accuse him of having killed the guy. And of course, the only soldier who knows why Kangchi's been out in the forest the past few nights was Soldier Kim, who was found dead. And so there's no one to really defend him. Well, in the meantime, Yeol tells her father exactly why Kangchi is innocent, that he wasn't responsible for that death. And she pretty much lets it known that she stayed the entire night out with Kangchi, and Dad is ticked off. Well, the next morning, or that morning, on the other side of town, Chun Soo Ryun, our headmistress, goes to see the older Suao, or the Japanese widow, and she goes there to apologize for Chung Jo's rudeness in demanding to know why the widow had found Soo Ryun's drum performance lacking and things like that. Well, it turns out that the older Seowa actually loved the performance, and she confesses. She tells Soo Ryun, Soo Ryun, I found your performance moving. It's the best that I've ever heard, and all of the stuff. And Soo Ryun's like, then why were you rude? And she said, well, I knew that that was the only way that you would come see me, because I wanted to talk with you. And then Seowa asks, can I visit your place sometime? And Chun Soo Ryun says women are not allowed. It's not a place where it would be fun for women. And she says, women only step across the threshold as one of two things, either as a kiseng or, as an owner of the brothel. And she leaves, and Soa gets this kind of look on her face, or you hear her say, huh, as either a kiseng or the owner, huh? And then as she's bathing, you then see the mark of the kissing that had been tattooed onto her. And then also the claw mark of when Waryong had grabbed her on the shoulder. And so it pretty much verifies for us that she is the older Seowa, although the older Seowa is now being portrayed by a different actress. I think Yoon Sona or something like that. I can't remember her name, but you guys know her. I have her name written on the blog too. Anyhow, so Dad is peeved. Dam Pyung Joon is peeved that Yeo Wool has spent the night with Kangchi, and so you have to remember this is Joseon area or like old time Korea, and like having spent the night out with another man is tantamount to saying that you've committed this huge crime. Anyway, so he gathers everyone, kitchen masters there, Tae Seo's there, Kwon's there, Yeo Wool and Kangchi, right? And then he pretty much drops 2 bombs. One is that Tae Seo is going to be going into the 100-year inn as a spy or as a mole and become Cho Gun-woong's man. Okay, and the second bomb is that Yeo Wool and Tae Seo have been engaged for a long time. It was a betrothal between the fathers, and that Yeo Wool now is going to put down the sword and start getting ready to take up her place as the future wife of Tae Seo. And so literally the entire group is stunned. Dam Pyung Joon walks out, the kitchen master walks out after him, and the 4 young guys are so sad. Kangchi and Tae Seo don't know how to react. Kwon, honestly, Kwon made my heart ache the most, because he's never even been able to tell her that he loves her, and yet, his facial expression, it felt like he took it the hardest, right? And then Yeo Wool is just stunned as well. So later on, Yeo Wool leaves, and Kwon follows after her, and just incredibly shocking. So huge news. So Yeo Wool goes and locks herself in her room, and then Kwon tries to go in to talk with her, and she tells him, I just want to be alone. And so Kwon leaves, and it's just this poignant thing where he leans against her door, hearing her cry on the other side. Well, back at the brothel, another person is crying, Chung Jo, and she's practicing her 5 drums, and as she's practicing, she flashes through all the memories that she had of Kangchi, and throughout that, she also, flashes back to the fact that she rejected Kangchi because she couldn't accept Kangchi's new, identity, whereas Yeo Wool had stayed by him knowing that, Kangchi was half monster. And so she just collapses on the floor in tears, and she tries to tell herself, you can't act like that, you can't wish for something. You rejected him first. So anyway, as she's crying though, she gets called into one of the rooms because Cho Gun-woong is there, and he says, hey, I have a present for you, and he returns to Chung Jo her personal maid. And so, the maid is all happy, and Chung Jo says, why is this a great gift when you stole her from me in the beginning, right? So very sharp, tongued. And Wolson, the veteran courtesan, is there, and she kind of goads Cho Gun-woong into trying to rebuke or punish Chung Jo. And Chung Jo very coldly says, well, if you want to do, give me a prize, then, first start with removing that woman. And so Cho Gun-woong tells Wolson, leave, and everyone's just stunned. And then Chung Jo sits down, pours him the wine, and Cho Gun-woong says, so it looks like you're adjusting. And she says, yes, you gave me the advice to throw away everything I have and in order to survive. And she's like, yes, I will survive every day, until I get the chance to stab you in the heart. And at her vehemence, literally Cho Gun-woong is stunned. But then he's like, good, good. I like the look in that, in your eyes right now. He's like, good. I look forward to the day that you, stab me in the heart. So anyway, well, we flash back to the academy, and Kang Chi is again counting his beans, and the kitchen master is there. And the kitchen master asks him, are you upset because of Yeo Wool and the betrothal and all things like that? And Kang Chi tries to play it off like he's not. And then the kitchen master very sagely asks about the bracelet and about Yeo Wool, because I guess he realizes that Kang Chi doesn't need a bracelet when he's around Yeo Wool. And then we flash back to the time when Yeo Wool had fallen asleep on his shoulder, and how Kang Chi had taken the bracelet off just to try, and to try to see if he would morph into Kumyo form, and he didn't. And he's stunned, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm not morphing. And so what's really great is that he's slowly starting to find certain powers that he has, as well as be able to control more his Kumyo side. Well, he finds out in this particular case that Yeo Wool is effective as his bracelet. And so when then he remembers back to the Lantern Festival when they were looking at the lantern, and Yeo Wool had made a wish. Like her wish was that he would be human, and Kang Chi had mistaken that, thinking that she had bought that lantern for him, and that was his wish. And she's like, no, get your own lantern wish. This is my wish. My wish is that you would become human, right? So Kang Chi is very moved that she thought of him first above herself and all of this stuff. But anyway, while they're looking at the lantern, he takes off the bracelet, and he again remains in human form. And so that's verification for him that Yeo Wool is effective for him as that magic bracelet, and that when he's around her, he doesn't morph into Kumyo self, right? Well, as he's counting beans and thinking on that, he senses evil Waryong's presence, and he looks, and he sees the evil guy there, and he doesn't know who he is, and he's like, who are you? Who are you? And the guy doesn't really say anything, but just evilly smiles, right? Well, symbolically what happens is Kang Chi gets up to confront Waryong from his little veranda. He ends up spilling the beans, and very symbolic, right? Or it's quite the symbol. And so you'll see that this series, I think in every episode, the writer really tries to put in one or two images that are quite symbolic of I guess the storyline. But anyway, by the time Kang Chi looks away from the spilled beans back to see where Waryong is, he's long gone. Well, we then move to Lee Soon Shin in the Admiral's the Navy Yard, and Dam Pyung Joon has brought to Lee Soon Shin 4 people. We finally get the identities of the 4 masters. First is Kwon, and that really surprised me because I didn't expect Kwon, who is so young, to be one of the 4 masters. The second, of course, is our kitchen master. The third is Tae Seo now, who is assuming his father's place as the Chrysanthemum. And then the orchid is Chun Soo Ryun, and I love the fact that she is the 4th master. And what moved me was that all 4 of them pledge their fidelity and their lives to Lee Soon Shin and his cause. And it's this great momentous occasion. And Lee Soon Shin says, you don't know the road that I am going to travel, where people won't appreciate you. They will turn your backs. There may be betrayal and things like that, hardships. It's better if I go alone. And Dam Pyung Joon says, on that road, how could we possibly let you travel alone? And it's just incredibly beautiful writing, and the actors act it well. They execute those lines really well. So basically, episode 14 really shows the joining of those forces, Lee Soon Shin with the 4 masters. Well, we then move into the plan to try to corner Cho Gun-woong, and one of the things that Lee Soon Shin asks Tae Seo to do when he goes in undercover as Cho Gun-woong's man is to find out the extent of Cho Gun-woong's treason or treachery. He wants to know if Chogonung is only selling information to the foreign countries, to like Japan, or whether Chogonung is actually more actively involved in trying to help with a possible invasion, right? And so in order to make Tae Seo's infiltration into Chogonung's, little group much more convincing, Lee Soon Shin actually hands over the plans for the turtle boats. So, and Tae Seo's like, oh my gosh, but these are top secret. Are you sure? And Lee Soon Shin tells him, we need to give Chogonung really good secrets. I can't talk right now. Really good secrets so that Chogonung will believe you, right? So there's that. Anyway, Yeo Wool, while that's going on, Yeo Wool learns from Song and a few others that people are leery of Kangchi, and Yeo Wool tries to defend Kangchi, and one of the guys says, how come you're always defending him and things like that? And Yeo Wool's like, I'm not defending him because it's him. She said, if something like this happened to one of you, I would defend you as well. And she's like, Kangchi is just trying to be human. And, this is the place where, he's chosen. And she reminds them that, this is the place that they came so that they could have a life as human beings too, as decent human beings and things like that. So, I'm trying to think what happens in this. Anyway, I don't remember, but anyway, so sorry, I'm looking through pictures and trying to refresh my memory because I saw the episode 2 days ago. Well, anyway, the reason why there was this whole suspicion of Kangchi after the murder of Soldier Kim is that Kangchi disappears. And so that was why the soldiers came to Yeo Wool to find out, where Kangchi was and such, right? And then Yeo Wool had reminded them that Kangchi is innocent until proven guilty and all of that stuff. Well, we learn very soon after that Yeo Wool takes off for the forest to try to find Kangchi when she finds out that he's missing as well, which is so stupid, right? But anyway, where did Kangchi go? He went to go see Sojong because he has a feeling that Sojong knows what's what with that mysterious evil guy, right? Well, when he goes to Sojong's house, he sees Sojong literally unconscious on the floor of the library. And when Kangchi revives him, Sojong basically says, Kangchi, run as far as you can. It's your father. He's returned and he's intent on destroying you. And so Kangchi's stunned, right? Well, while this is going on and Kangchi, gets the shock of his life, Yeo Wool realizes that something in the forest is tracking her, and so she starts running away. And in the process, of course, she stumbles, her ankle gets twisted, and as she's on the floor or on the ground, Waryong comes up, and it's this creepy kind of suspenseful moment where Waryong gets down to eye level with her. He stoops down, kneels down on the forest ground, and then he tilts her chin up, and all you hear is Yeo Wool's voice telepathically asking Kangchi for help, because by then Kangchi runs out of Sojong's house, intent on trying to protect everyone that he holds dear, and he hears Yeo Wool's voice saying, Kangchi, help me, and then he takes off running. And so the episode really ends with Kangchi. It looks like Kangchi spots Yeo Wool, but who knows whether it's him just trying to locate her. So anyway, I did have a few things that I wanted to point out that I thought was hilarious. The scene when Kwon and the teacher are wrestling, it's hilarious because the kitchen master says this word like sagaji bagaji, and I don't know if a lot of Koreans, native speaking Koreans, would find that phrase funny, but for me, having grown up in the United States, not hearing that phrase a whole lot, anytime I hear it, it just cracks me up. So kitchen master just kind of like, what's all the sagaji bagaji and all that? So I thought that was really cute. The other thing was, though, when Yeo Wool is talking with her father, In episode 13, I had talked about how I love the mentors and the mentoree, the mentorees relationships, and how Lee Soon Shin is such a great, wise mentor to Kangchi. Same with Suryun to Chung Jo, right? Well, Yeo Wool has that with her father, and Tae Seo, of course, with his father, Merchant Park. Since Merchant Park is no longer around, Tae Seo's new mentor, in a sense, is Dam Pyung Joon, right? Well, what's interesting is that in this episode especially, you see Yeo Wool realizing that her father's image, the image that she had of her father as someone who is righteous and noble and always right and wise, that's starting to fracture a little bit because, the father says to her during one of their conversations, I can't trust you anymore. And she's like, what do you mean? Because he was telling her, after she confessed that she had stayed out all night with Kangchi, he says, before he came into our lives, I could trust you with everything. And now I find that I can't. And Yeo throws that back at him saying, can't you trust my judgment about Kangchi then? Because you taught me to be a wise, level-headed girl. And Dam Pyung Joon's like, no, this is not something I can trust you with. The other thing is, nope, I guess that's it. That was all the musings that I had. I mentioned it all during my recap. So anyway, I hope this made sense. I hope some of you who haven't watched episode 14 found this recap relatively understandable. It's always a little bit weird for me if I'm looking at the camera and talking. Sometimes I wonder, did I just make sense? I won't know until I guess I rewatch this video. But in any case, thanks for watching. Thanks for continuing to support this channel. I know that this recap is 2 weeks now overdue? No, just a week overdue. A little over a week overdue. But I hope you are still able to find it enjoyable. I will try to get episode 15 and 16 watched and video recapped within the next few days. So thanks continually for your support, and I will see you, I guess, within a few days. Take care, everyone. Bye!